of it. It's kind of a minimalist offseason for the Royals. Some fans hoping that they would do a little bit more. Other fans perfectly okay with them sitting pat. Let's talk first about the signing that they made in mid-December. The Royals went out and signed left-handed pitcher Ryan Yarbrough, 31-year-old lefty out of Old Dominion. Apparently, they're forming the Old Dominion alumnus game at Kauffman Stadium frequently, because now we got Yarbrough from Old Dominion, we got Vinny Pasquantino from Old Dominion, we got Matt Quatrero from Old Dominion. Apparently, that team is they're pumping out talent. And so they signed Yarbrough to a 1-year, $3 million deal. He's a career 4.33 ERA with a 19.2% K rate and a 5.4% walk rate. Soft-tossing lefty, uses an 82-mile-an-hour cutter as his main fastball, and he gets by sort of on pitchability, movement, and command. Alex, Mike, I want to start with the overall. What did you guys think of this Ryan Yarbrough signing? How do you feel about the Royals spending a little bit of money, very little money, for this lefty who may or may not make the rotation, more of a swingman type?
This is the kind of guy that the Royals get all the time, it feels like. It feels like they get guys like this all the time. But I actually like it as a signing. Now, I don't know. I think they're going to try and fit him in as a starter, but I'm not sure that's the best role for Ryan Yarbrough. But, I like it. Now, this is the kind of move I feel like a team that's on the cusp of winning does. The Royals are not on the cusp of winning. So that seems a little bit weird to me. It seems like maybe it's just hey, let's get a guy to fill some innings rather than this is going to be the guy that puts us in contention for the division. But if the Royals really aren't in a place for that anyway, but yeah, I do like him. I like him as a good piece on a team. He's just not going to move the needle for the starting rotation at all.
Yeah, more like yawn, bro.
Yeah. That's the type of comedy you tune into this for right there. Yeah.
This was I think every single Royals blogger picked the Royals to sign Yarbrough. I think every single one of us did it. Because I know for a fact Lesky did. I'm pretty sure Craig Brown did. I know I did. I'm pretty sure everybody could see this coming from a mile away. And what kind of scares me about these two signings, and it's almost funny. It's not funny. It's not good, but it's almost so bad that it's funny, is when they signed Yarbrough, and don't get me wrong before I just shit all over this, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. And you could sign literally anybody for 1 year, $3 million, and you're not going to upset me. It could have been literally anyone other than maybe a Trevor Bauer, right, where there's baggage attached to it. Any decent human being, 1 for $3 million, okay, whatever, that's fine. The part that concerns me is it feels like they signed Yarbrough and Lyles, who we'll get to, just somebody's got to go get some outs. Can somebody please go get some outs? We don't care that you give up 7 runs before you get 3 outs, but we need to get 3 outs that our young guys don't have to get. And that is just so defeating that in December they're telling you in advance, hey, this is not going to go well. We're straight up not going to have a good time again in 2023. So when they signed both of these guys, I was oh boy. This is just a straight up who can stay healthy for 162 and get us by.
Well, I think it wasn't just the healthy. That is a big part of it, I think. But it's also who can we sign who can throw a strike? I think that was their big thing. Because if you look at Yarbrough's and Lyles's, main selling points would be they don't walk people. And so I think they were let's find some guys who are going to throw the ball over the plate. It's going to be right over the plate. They're not going to be great pitches. But let's hope they don't get hit out of the yard and our guys can track them down. That's all they're really sort of hoping for here. And it's not like Yarbrough hasn't had good seasons in the major leagues. He has had good seasons in the major leagues. He's coming off a pretty pedestrian season with the Rays. Hasn't looked great didn't look great for him last year. But as a guy who's going to go out and throw you basically 100 innings as a spot starter, swingman kind of guy, we all expected it because it all made perfect sense for where the Royals are in their sort of trajectory right now. And, one of the things I find super interesting about Yarbrough is that he's a cutter first guy. That's his fastball is his cutter. And it makes you wonder, are they going to get more comfortable with guys doing stuff like that? Is it going to be more likely that Daniel Lynch does something like that or some other guy does something like that where they're sort of getting away from their four-seam fastballs? The Royals have a rotation full of dudes with bad four-seam fastballs. It'd be interesting to see if they went to a system where they started letting guys throw cutters more or something like that. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, a la James Shields. The organization didn't have a lot of guys that threw quality changeups. James Shields got here. He started. We've heard stories about him working with Danny Duffy on a changeup, but then the organization started almost pushing changeups more and more. And so, yeah, I could. If that's all you get out of Ryan Yarbrough is an organization willing to throw cutters more, I'll take it.
They've spent $3 million in worse ways. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh yeah.
This is like the thing that you make the joke, but like this is the beauty of signing guys that are low end like this. And Mike brought it up, is this feels like a move you make to compete. And that's like the weirdest part about where they're at is if Ryan Yarbrough was willing to come to KC on a 1-year, $3 million deal, and again, I was rambling, getting to the point of, it makes me believe they told him he has a chance to start. Like, Ryan Yarbrough probably had 1 for 2, 1 for 1.5 with a club that can compete. And it feels like when you're in that kind of a ballpark that he would have signed with somebody who was more ready to compete than the Royals if it was all about just being on a good team, the money. But something tells me that because of the money and the years and where the Royals are, that he's going to get a chance to start. So I wanted to come back to that. But the Mike was all around it. But that's kind of where I was at. He's going to get a chance, I think. Now, whether he starts or not, I don't know. But I think it'll be open competition in spring training.
See, I think they'll say it's open competition, but I'm like, I just don't see him winning that spot because – he's filled that role for Quatrero in the past of a swingman and that sort of thing. And because the Royals have so many guys who they're looking forward to be in that rotation. You know, you talk about Lyles now, but Lynch and Bubic and Heasley, and I think Max Castillo is going to get a look too. And I think maybe Angel Zerpa gets a look. I doubt it, but maybe. And
maybe Hernandez.
He's getting it. Maybe if that new pitching, if Sweeney comes in and unlocks him, they just have a lot of guys who are going to get looks for those last 3 spots in the rotation. And do I think Yarbrough wins it? I doubt it, but I think he's definitely going to make – if somebody said over under Yarbrough makes 5 starts in 2023, I think I'll probably take the over if somebody forces me to pick on that one.
I agree, for the simple fact that you've got a lot of young starters that are going to need help. And I say young. They're not young anymore. You have a lot of – bad starters who have not proven themselves, and just having that experience to go out there and get through a game it's sad that we're sitting here talking about that, but that's what the Yarbrough signing screams is somebody go out there and get him out, please.
We'd have killed for Ryan Yarbrough in August last year. Killed for
him.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about another guy who maybe will come in and provide even more innings than Yarbrough. Jordan Lyles was signed like 2 or 3 weeks after Yarbrough. We were talking Christmas time, New Year's time, in that stretch there. If you don't know, Lyles is a 32-year-old right-handed pitcher, previously pitched with Baltimore last season, has pitched with, I think, the Rangers in the past, before that, Colorado for a while. A bunch of bad hitting environments, honestly. He has pitched in some of the worst hitting environments or pitching environments that you can find in Major League Baseball. He's got a career 5.10 ERA, 17.6% strikeout rate, and a 7.7% walk rate. The league loves his low 90s fastball at this point. They just feast off of it. But luckily, he's been throwing it less and less. He's got a good curveball and a good slider, both by opponent numbers and by the movement metrics and things like that. I just posed this question to you because you talked about how Alex and Mike talked about how like the Royals don't have a ton of great pitching right now. Is Jordan Lyles an actual improvement to this rotation?
I think he is. Now, that says maybe more about the starting rotation currently than it does about Jordan Lyles. But I do think he's the kind of guy that when you and I were talking towards the end of the season, hey, these are the upcoming free agents that are going to be available. We discussed a couple times, okay, do you spread your money out and get two, maybe possibly 3 starters that are in that mid to lower tier? He's a guy I could have seen them getting in that lower tier, that third guy. Like, hey, he might eat some innings for us, but we know exactly what we're going to get with him. So yeah, I think he does improve it, but only because he's again more consistent and you know what you're going to get from him. He's also not moving the needle. He's not taking your starting rotation from bottom third to middle third. That's for sure.
The way I look at this is the Royals signed Lyles to physically make starts if need be. But I think obviously the best case scenario is that Lyles starts the year in the bullpen, right? Like the best case scenario is that Brady Singer's your one, Brad Keller rebounds and can make starts and be a productive starter for the team, that Jackson Kowar, Daniel Lynch, Chris Bubich, Angel Zerpa, Jonathan Heasley, that 5 of those names can fill your rotation out, and they're forced to move Lyles to the bullpen, right? Like that's best case scenario. And is it likely? No. That's the best case scenario. And then if you need a Jordan Lyles later on the line, if Lynch gets hurt, which he missed some time on the IL last year, if Heasley's not cutting it, if Kowar's got to go to the pen, then he's there. But I think best case scenario is Lyles doesn't make any starts in a Royals uniform. I just don't. That's the issue right now, is until we really understand what this new regime is going to do for the arms currently in the organization. I think with Lyles, your expectations just should be tempered a little bit. I think what Mike said is 1,000% true. Even if he's your number 2 starter, your rotation's not getting substantially better. I think all he does is like anchor the floor down a little bit. So the 2 inning starts of giving up 8 runs, like generally not what you're going to get from Lyles. He's a pretty consistent 4 to 6 inning, 4 to 6 run guy. I mean, it's just kind of what you come to expect from him. And we talked about the cutter earlier, and is the organization going to be more apt to open to things? The thing I like about Lyles potentially going to the bullpen is he gets elite horizontal movement on his slider. Patrick Brennan, the founding father of Royals Farm Report, tipped me off to that earlier this offseason. Like, hey, Lyles made some tweaks to his slider, and it is more of a sweeper now. It is kind of moving into a newer age where guys are trying to intentionally force the ball right to left versus getting vertical movement going down, right? And Lyles seems to fit that mold. And maybe, we saw Dylan Coleman do a little bit of that last year, where his slider started to sweep more than it's breaking down. Maybe the organization is wrapping their heads around this idea of moving pitching into the 21st century instead of sitting back in the 20th century. And maybe there's just a good combination of things working here in terms of the veterans they are bringing in.
Yeah, the rosy picture, when you look at this, is like maybe they've targeted guys they think have something, they have a different level, or they have a different gear, or they can take advantage of something somebody hasn't taken advantage of in the past with these guys. If you're looking at Lyles, you would say, well, what if they turn him into a curveball slider pitcher primarily? Because his curveball has a ton of vertical movement. Well, and so now he has a profile of a really good horizontal movement with the slider and really good vertical movement with his curveball. Those are swing and miss pitches for him. All he has to do otherwise is not get shelled on his fastball too much, basically at that point. And so with a guy like Lyles, I look at that and I think they've paid him so much money, they're going to expect him to be a rotation guy, right? I also look at it and I say, they've signed guys who maybe they're like on other teams, they're nothing more than 4 or 5 starters or something like that. They're just sort of marginal guys. But if they think we're going to solidify our floor, because what was the hard part about 2022 wasn't that like they didn't have a top end guy. They had Brady Singer performing like a number 1, number 2. The problem was their bottom half of their rotation wasn't fit for major league play. It was just
wasn't even
the
competitive.
Numbers. Yeah. No, the numbers from Keller, Lynch, Bubich, Heasley, those guys were way outside of major league average. They're like they're looking at major league average with binoculars from where they're sitting, And so I think what they're saying is maybe the answer isn't we can't go out and buy elite pitching anyway. We can't afford it. We haven't developed it yet, but we can solidify our floor a little bit and say we're not going to get, that's where we're going to make up some ground. Is not giving up 8 runs in the first inning, like Alex mentioned.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you guys. That like, do you see Jordan Lyles as major league average for a starter or slightly below, and then ask yourself this: how many guys in our rotation last year you can say the same thing about that? even reach that level, right? And it's not very one. It's really one, and so that's why I think for sure he's going to be in the starting rotation. Yes, it would be fantastic if in spring training we come out and we see a new Chris Bubich that can command his fastball, and we see a John Heasley who can be more consistent, and we see a Daniel Lynch who improves his fastball, or maybe now is throwing a different, like a cutter or going to a two-seamer or something like that. That would be great. But I think you're going to see a lot of Jordan Lyles starting games this year.
One thing that I was thinking about, and this is kind of an outside the box, I don't really know how much weight there's to any of this, but if you go back to the last 3 free agent pitchers, starting pitchers the Royals have brought in, Greinke, Lyles, Yarbrough, they all have something in common, which is they throw exceptionally not hard. Like their ingredients are to throw under the bat speed. And I wonder, as I think about the concept of this, is in an era where guys, and I've tweeted about this before, but guys throw harder than ever. We throw the best fastballs in the history of ever, and we're throwing fewer of them. Like we're learning very slowly that there aren't rules that say you have to throw your fastball a certain amount of times. There aren't rules that say your fastball has to be set to establish the off. You don't have to establish the fastball. It's fake. It doesn't exist. All your fastball has to do is show the hitter that you can get him out with it, and then everything else can work. By bringing in 3 guys now, Greinke, Lyles, Yarbrough, who throw exceptionally slow for the level, they're almost like trying to show the younger guys, be you. Like, this is working for them because they're not trying to be something they're not. They're not trying, hey, Daniel Lynch, because this is, I'm sorry, I'm getting long-winded, but this is something that I think Daniel Lynch tried to do last year is, okay, everybody else is pitching to the top of the zone. Let me see if I can do that. And he can't. He can't pitch to the top of the zone. He tried. He's not good at it. He even flattened his fastball out a little bit. Like, he maximized his four-seam approach. That's not very good. Sink it. Marcus, you said maybe cut it. Like, do something different. And there's a map, and I wish I could show. I didn't bring a graphic, but Kyle Bodie puts these pictures out of and it was when Shohei brought out his sinker this past year. It's like, here's a graph of all the fastballs, and you don't want to be in the middle. You want to be somewhere on the edges. You want your fastball to be different than everybody else. It doesn't have to be better. It just needs to be different. And that's what I wrote about last year is Daniel Lynch's fastball is exceptionally average, which is not good. Find a way to make it different. And Yarbrough cuts it. Lyles cuts it. Greinke sinks it. Like, how can we make our fastballs unique instead of trying to maximize them like Spencer Strider does? You're not Spencer Strider. You can't make your fastball almost look like it's rising to the top of the zone. But what can you do to set yourself apart? And all these pitchers they're bringing in kind of all have that in common, where they've had to set their fastballs apart. Even if they're not the best at it, they're making the most of what they have, and what they have isn't a lot.
And I think also an added dimension to that is those guys who don't throw very hard are to some degree a market inefficiency. They cost less than those guys who throw really hard. You're paying premium prices for premium velocity when the world can simply say, is the velocity increase, does it give you more production? Not necessarily, or at least not worth $10 million more than we could get Jordan Lyles for, or whatever, And so I think you're right, Alex. I think it's a combination of two things. I think they're leaning into the notion that they can find guys for relatively cheap who don't throw great fastballs or hard fastballs or something like that, but who do other things. And if the Royals are going to get anything out of Jordan Lyles, if they're going to hope that he has the best year of his career, they're going to do it with a pitch mix where he is not throwing his fastball more than 30% of the time. Like, that's just going to happen. It's going to be curveballs. It's going to be sliders. It's going to be other things. They're probably going to have to lean into a similar approach with our other guys. But I think if we're going to look at these two signings positively, we would say wise decision to go out and take guys you think can be a little bit better than the market thinks, because you can give them a different pitch mix. You can put them in front of a very athletic defense, and you can put them in Kauffman Stadium. And it's like, a lot of guys are going to be – look at Greinke last year. Do you think Greinke is nearly as successful as he was last year if he's pitching in Baltimore or down in Houston or down in Texas or in Arlington or whatever. I seriously doubt it, right? There is a formula for getting increased value out of the starting pitch at free agent market, and I think that they're kind of finding it with these signings. It's like we can't pay for guys to strike people out, but we can pay guys to not walk people and to not have the ball leave the yard. They're going to be their thing.